Hey folks, welcome to this episode of the Everyday Millionaire podcast and the Mindset Matters edition, where I'm joined by my wife and Olympic mental performance coach, Steffany Hanlon-Francie. Together, Steffany and I engage in a conversation about different aspects of what we refer to as Mindset Matters. We believe that we're living in and through one of the most impactful global events in history. And let's face it, few have trained for or are equipped to deal with the life that is unfolding before them. The need to pivot in your business, your career, or perhaps deal with shifting family dynamics lies before many. We hope to inspire you to ask yourself questions or pause to consider how you view your world, your life. We'll invite you to check in on where you are on your journey, and are you still clear on your intended destination, or has it changed? Join us for this in our series of Mindset Matters. Listen in, enjoy. Hey folks, welcome to the Everyday Millionaire podcast, Mindset Matters episode. As always, joined by Steffany Hanlon-Francie, the brilliant, beautiful, uber smart, talented,
sometimes frustrating,
very frustrating co-host.
Hi, hon.
Hi. Okay, we got a lot of ground to cover, lots of really cool things to talk about today. I mean, you're coming off the Olympics. I'm coming off with you. I was kind of part of your support team. And along the journey, as we work with the clients that we work with, you with your Olympic athletes and myself with the RAIN community, as well as that coaching we do in professional development side of things, what we come to understand is certain patterns that we want to recognize. And we've recognized them with ourselves. I want to always stress that, is that we not only coach this work, we live this work, and we're always learning, always growing, always trying to figure shit out. So we often use the term and the expression that, awareness is the first step in anyone's journey of where they want to go, right?
Awareness is a curse, but also it can be a blessing.
Well, I think, I used to use that phrase too. And then, and I've lost her name, who taught me TM so many years ago. Paula, yes. Paula said, I said that to her once. I said, awareness is a curse and a blessing. And she goes, it's always a blessing. It's only ever a blessing. Okay, so let's talk about awareness and start on that conversation about awareness. It's a big one. Now, we all have, I shouldn't say we all, we will often set goals, specific targets and goals. And then as well, let's just talk about outcomes. And then a little bit about how we want our life to work and how we want our life to look. And we set goals along the way that will support that. And there was question that gets asked, which is, are you interested in those outcomes and those goals, or are you committed to them? Which is a worthy conversation given you just coming off the Olympics. Okay, go.
Wow. There's a lot of interest in being Olympic champion. Sure. Mm-hmm. But it takes a little bit more than interest. It takes a lot of commitment, blood, sweat, and tears. It takes awareness. It takes a willingness to change and to move and to grow and to maybe even leave your own country. It takes a readiness. You have to prepare. It takes action. It takes...
Well, it takes to what you said, it takes commitment, right? So the question is that, we see this with real estate investors, we see this with business owners, we see this with just people in general. We're guilty of it too. As are we interested in something, or are we committed to it? When we're committed to it, then we have to realize that we're going to go through and on the journey. This is a conversation we've had in previous podcasts, which is people want the gold medal. They see that gold medal. They want the $1 billion because they see the guy with the $1 billion and the planes and all the stuff, or the hundreds of millions or tens of millions, whatever that looks like for that particular person. They see the outcome is the point. What they don't see is the journey to get there, what it takes. And what it took was a commitment and the willingness to go on the journey. And because they also recognize that the journey is an important part of it. They want to go on the journey.
They have to want to go on the journey and know that there is a journey.
Yes. And so that goes back to the commitment part of it. And so when you're committed to something, you are committed to going on that journey and just figuring shit out. So whatever that is, putting the right people in your life, learning as you go along, and understanding who you have to become to achieve that outcome. And so when we look at this, the next part of awareness is in who we're being, in what we're doing, how we're showing up. And awareness is not enough, I guess, is the biggest thing, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Because it's interesting. We were, or you were, I guess, coaching somebody around awareness, and they said to you, I have a lot of awareness.
Oh, I have a ton of awareness. Oh, that was brilliant. Yeah, it was such an eye-opener for me. She goes, I'm hugely aware. I know exactly what's going on, and I know what that person is doing, and why they're right and they're wrong. And I kind of stopped her, and I said, I don't think that's awareness. I think it's judgment.
Well, she's aware of her judgments.
No, she thought they were awareness, and it actually propped her up and made her very, very right. Because she was very strong in her opinions and very strong in her belief systems, and she was a right fighter. So it was very difficult at that time for me to help her shift onto seeing that is not awareness. Awareness is internal. Judgment is when you throw your quote unquote awareness onto what you think other people are doing right or wrong, and then you make your decisions based on that. Awareness, self-awareness is the first step.
Well, I think that's, in this particular conversation, I mean, we can have an awareness of what's going on in our environment, for example. Is it safe? Is it dangerous? What's happening in our environment? There's an awareness of that, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the awareness of who we are, and that leads us to the conversation about the awareness of, for perhaps we get into it right away, which is the awareness of our belief systems. Okay.
Ooh, that's tough. Our BS?
Our BS. So when we look at belief systems, and this is such an interesting conversation, and the reason that I wanted to get into that belief systems side of the equation is because awareness isn't enough. You can have an awareness of your patterns, you can have an awareness of your belief system, but then you have to make a concerted and focused effort to examine that and really choose, if you are, to do the work to actually reconfigure that belief system. Because a lot of belief systems that we have, we may be aware of them and we may want to change them, but that takes work because our default and our brain is wired to take the path of least resistance, which is go back to our belief system, even if we know it's not serving us.
Totally. So where do you think those belief systems come from?
Well, we've done enough work over the years to understand that our belief systems, most of our belief systems, and I don't know what percentage, I wouldn't want to share, but I think it's probably 95% of our belief systems. We've all heard this stat before, developed before we're 5 or 6 years old, right? I mean, we come into this world with no belief systems. We come into this world a blank sheet of paper. And then as we go through life and we have experiences in early on, especially, they get hardwired into us. Now, those experiences and what we do are, I guess, confirmed or supported by our experience with it, right? Like, so our belief is a function of our experiences or interpretation of an experience, and or somebody who verifies that experience as, well, that was an awesome experience, or that was a not awesome experience, that was a bad experience. And so we believe and we shape our belief systems around that.
What's interesting about that is, as I'm learning over the last few years with the Olympians and the clients that I work with, is that busting the belief systems, or busting, or not busting them, but breaking them or shifting them, is probably the hardest work I've ever done with people.
So when we have our belief systems, ultimately that forms into our story, right? The story of our life, the story of why we can do things, why we can't do things, the story of our mindset. Is it growth mindset? Is it a fixed mindset? That's all part of what we're doing. So in this particular conversation, and what we're trying to get to here is to examine our belief systems and understand that our belief systems have to be questioned. So the awareness of it is, okay, I'm going to use an example. We were talking about this pre-show, and I'm very mechanically inclined. And I'm not off the charts mechanically inclined, but I'm definitely, above average in terms of mechanical inclination for.
Or hence your nickname is Patrick MacGyver.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the point of it is this, is that I grew up in an environment with my dad who we were fixing cars. We were fixing stuff all the time. We were fixing things. It was like, don't go buy it new, fix it. That was then. So, but in that environment, I would be working on a project. My dad would walk in and go, well, my dad was a little bit different, but he would do one of two things. He'd say, Is that the best you can do? Let me show you how to do it better, or you can do that better. So all probably well-intended as a dad. He's just trying to guide his son. But what's my interpretation of it? My interpretation of it is I'm doing it wrong and I can't do it right. Well, that all of a sudden becomes a narrative I have that I carry forward into my adult life, which is I'm doing it wrong, I can't do it right. And I can blame my dad for that, which I have many times, and realizing that part of the shift of that belief system is also forgiving him and realizing that I have the talent, I can do it. And what I've learned to do and what he taught me to do is actually very functional. And it was a gift that he gave me, in spite of what I believed for so many years about myself, just by his simple being a dad, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's interesting. Even this morning, as we were working on the content for this conversation, is that, you know, we bump into something, and one of the first things you say, well, I must be wrong. And I'm like, how is that even possible? How is it even possible? But it carries on through our life. And without the level of awareness that you have, I think that could have been something that really stopped you on your journey of personal development.
Oh, 100%. And so the thing about belief systems is that first we have to recognize them, then we have to question them, and then we have to do the work to bust through that. So just having a realization of the belief system is not enough.
Do you think it's like it's just the way I am guy story?
Yeah, it's just the way I am.
You know, back in the day when Patrick and I first got together, we used to have these conversations and very much aligned on, you know, the universe and what's going on and creativity and all these things. And then one day we were having a conversation about something. I says, well, why do you do that? And he said,
just the way I am.
It's just the way I am. I went, what? What do you mean it's just the way you are? I go, how limiting is that? What if you're way more than that? And I think we talk about this stuff doesn't happen in epiphanies, but I think that moment might have been an epiphany.
Oh, it was. I've shared that story many times because the realization that you shared with me, or that I got from the conversation we had around it, was you actually said to me, you said, well, you realize that's a choice. And it was like, what?
Oh yeah, I watched your brain just blow up in that moment.
Exactly.
What do you mean it's a choice?
Exactly.
I'm not just this way by default, by accident.
So when we look at the fact that our belief systems control or dictate our thoughts dictate our behaviors. So if we're not getting the results we want in our life, then we either blame circumstances or outside forces, or something we talk about a lot of time is that your life is a reflection of who you're being
and your values.
And your values. But who you're being and your values are based on your belief systems. And so this is all to say that we have to always go to the next layer in this body of work. You know, self-discovery and is a great body of work, but what do you do with what it is that you discover?
Well, especially if you're just looking for confirmation of being right. You know, for me, I always enter a conversation, especially if I know that I'm going to be working with a client that's they want to set a new goal. They've set a new standard, a higher goal. They want to be Olympic champion. They don't just want to be, going to the Olympics. But they keep getting the same result over and over and over again, and they're not willing to look at their mindset. They're not willing to see where those results are actually coming from a certain set of beliefs, which creates a certain level of behavior and commitment level that isn't going to get them to the top of the podium. And when those things happen, when that mind shift happens, I do an exercise called What If I'm Wrong? And that blows people away because they go, what do you mean, what if I'm wrong? I know this, I know that. And I go, well, if you already know all this, why are you being coached? And why have you put yourself in an environment with the best coaches in the world and you're not willing to actually consider what they're saying to be somewhat true for you? And most of the times, especially with young men, they're like, nope, I know best. I go, then why are you here? You've gotten to this point in your journey, on your career. You've gotten this level of success. Yay. But you say you want more, but you're not going to get more by doing what you did to get here. And that's a mental and emotional shift.
So as we work through this and understanding that, our belief systems also are what drive our habits. And we have to examine those habits and examine how they are serving us. And we then make excuses that it's a habit and I don't want to break the habit. It's too hard to break the habit. But the point of all of this is that if you're listening to a Mindset Matters podcast, there's something in the context of it that you see that you want to learn, you want to discover, and you want, this, what am I going to do to move forward in a better, more powerful way? Now, our belief systems are so important because, as I said earlier, it's actually what drives your story. And so if you're not happy with the story of your life, then you need to rewrite the story. It's up to you to actually make the changes to rewrite the next, whatever it is, the next day you can start. But the point of it is that it has to be taking the time, having the awareness to look at your belief systems and question them. So, for example, right now, I'm very focused with all the diversity that's going on in the world right now, the polarization. We've got politics on one side, we've got medical on the other, we've got vax and anti-vax and mask and anti-mask and war. I mean, it's all, quite frankly, very tiresome. And I have my views of the world, but my views of the world are really irrelevant in this conversation. We entertained the other night. We had friends over. They have a view of the world. And what I really got to around it all is I want to just stop and listen. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. But in this conversation, I don't really feel a need necessarily to be understood. I can vent and I can get pissed off. I can really disagree with what is happening politically, for example. But at the end of the day, what I'm really being open to doing right now is listening to the other side of an argument that I don't necessarily agree with, whatever that argument is. And it could be politics, it could be vax, it could be COVID. I don't, I'm just wanting to listen to it and understand the other side. I think that's healthy. And what I find right now is that as I'm listening to others be passionate about it, be driven, like, this is right. This is like, you don't get vaccinated, you're a fool, you're putting that shit in your body. And then you got the other guy going, you got to protect me, you got to get vaccinated to protect me and the rest of the world. And I'm going, holy crap, they're so intense about it. And what if we just step back from it and really examine it? And it's all based on belief systems.
It is. And it's not actually it doesn't have to be as divisive as it is. It's because I think we're being a little bit brainwashed and being told that, one is right and one is wrong. And when that happens, we tend as human beings to want to take a side because we're community oriented. We want to fit in somewhere. We want to find a tribe or a group, whether we believe it or not. But then next thing you know, the more you're defending your belief system, or the more that you're right fighting is what we call it, that you're right fighting, to me, that would be a trigger or a clue that maybe I'm being polarized. And in order to make powerful decisions, to be empowered versus being a victim, I have to be able to recognize when I'm being driven to be right. And that to me is a signal that I need to slow down and step back. And going back to this situation that we're in right now, whether it's COVID and people are mandates, and I know people that are fighting to keep the mandates on. They want to keep going with masks and mandates and all that because they feel safe.
Yeah, and it makes them feel safe.
It makes them feel safe.
100%.
So I respect that. I mean, I don't want other people to be responsible for my safety. I've never been that way. But if that's how they feel, then I respect that. But then on the other side, I find that there's less respect for people who then say, listen, I'm responsible for my own health. I'm going to die of something. I'm going to have to make choices in my life to keep myself healthy. It's not your responsibility to keep me safe. But we're being told that it is. So then the people that are looking for safety, which is important in some people's lives, not in mine, is to gravitate towards people that have that same belief system, and then it gets reinforced. There's same people on the other side where they're very against everything. They will find their tribe.
And their belief system will be reinforced.
And it becomes reinforced. So what happens is the divide gets greater, right? So then we're being told that we have to accept everybody and everything from Black Lives Matters to gay pride, and everybody's normal now. Well, why are we celebrating gay pride? Why are we celebrating, or why are we getting behind certain situations? Because now if we're all the same and everybody's right, where's our where's our culture going?
Well, and those are bigger conversations, but I mean, this is part of what has been driving, COVID's a great example because it's in our face. We're seeing it happen, unfold right before our eyes. And a lot of that is driven by belief systems. But here's the fundamental thing about it. Within that, there's got to be leaders. There's got to be individuals who aren't self-righteous. Yes, you've got to have that individual that's going to lead who's going to lead the convoy. You need those people. Who's going to fight against the convoy? You're going to have those people. But the point is somewhere in the middle. I'm not neutral, by the way, and I make no bones about that. I have a view of the world, but at the end of the day, I've really become not self-righteous about it. I'm just observing. I have my view of the world, and I didn't know I was doing it, but I said, what I'm seeing with the general population for many is we're going into this survival mode. And it's like, in order to survive, you have to be this or you have to be that. Now, what has this all got to do with belief systems and mindset and all the rest of it? It has everything to do with it, because how do you shift your belief system to the degree that you can take a charge off of it one way or the other, if you want to? How does it serve you? So we asked the question, and you kind of almost got to it, which is there's fundamentally two states. There's that empowering state, and then there is that primal state. Now, primal state lives in self-righteousness and anxiety, and I'll call it...
it's reactivity. It's our lizard brain.
Yeah, thank you. It's our lizard brain. That is in the primal state. Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't have a world or you don't have an understanding and awareness of what state you're in, then you have no way of assessing it to say, is there a correction I can put in here? How do I get out of a primal state? What's driving this primal state? You may not even be aware. As a matter of fact, it may be a habit you get into. I think we've all met those individuals that it's always a drama. It's always like they go from 0 to 100 of either angry or emotional or something.
Self-righteous.
In a moment of time, yeah. Right? And it's like lead to that primal state. So what is driving that primal state is in fact a belief system. And so then we have to examine what is that belief system. And the bigger question is how do we bust it? How do we bust a belief system? You can have the awareness of it, and it doesn't. Because here's the thing. Path of least resistance, we're going to go back to what serves us and is the easiest. That's the path of so you actually have to make a commitment to bust that belief system and bust that habit.
Mm-hmm. And get out of your comfort zone. Because in that comfort zone, that circles back through, like you said, to your belief system, is that you don't then have to stretch or maybe even consider a different perspective. And when we don't consider a different perspective, then we're locked in and we're in a fixed mindset again, which will continually drive the behavior of right fighting or being righteous. And it doesn't matter what side of righteousness you're on. The minute you're righteous about something or self-righteous, then it becomes, you're in your primal brain. Mm-hmm. There's primal. And when you're in that primal brain, you're constantly in defense because you can't be wrong, because it's a matter of life or death. That's
it's a reactive state.
Yeah, but it's a life or death reaction. Sure. That's the primal brain. That's survival. That's survival. But if you're in an empowered state where you can see other perspectives, then there's an opportunity for growth, maybe for conversation, maybe for less divisiveness. But those two states are so powerful and they drive us. But if you don't know you're in it, and then someone says, "Hey, maybe we consider having a different perspective," and then they fight back. And like my mom would say, like, well, how do you expect countries to get along?
Well, the other part about being in an empowering state, it's where creativity lives. It's where listening lives. It's where joy and happiness and inspiration lives in that state. The primal goes back to that fear. Disempowering, that fear, and understanding that, fear is that, future events appearing real. We're living into the future. Mm-hmm. And by the way, it never works out that way. And I think this story is really the data shows that 100% of the time, it's never as bad or to the degree that we think it's going to be. Never, 100% of the time.
Operating from that primal state and the reactivity in that limbic system is fight, flight, or freeze. And that's what I'm seeing right now. People talk about fight or flight, but what doesn't get brought up a lot is freeze. And this is where people are being paralyzed right now in their decision making, the goal setting. I mean, it took all we could do. It took our entire Ice Academy Montreal coaching staff to make sure that the athletes all got to where they needed to go, because there was so much pushback on the other side about what couldn't happen, what hoops you're going to have to jump through. This isn't going to happen. Oh, they canceled another competition. All the negativity was there that it could have been so easy just to give up.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about, there is a belief system, a definition for beliefs, which is a group of cells that have been connected and then reinforced. So belief, as a definition, a group of cells that have been connected and then reinforced. So here's the thing about it. We can make that definition make sense in our brain. Intellectually, we get that. It's pretty easy to say, if you say that's black, and everybody around you says it's black, even though it's white, you believe the color black, it's not a color, but you believe black is now white, or right. some version of that story, right? So it's what's connecting, and then it is actually enforced by evidence, what we see as evidence, or others around us. Okay, so now then, we know that beliefs are trained into us based on our experiences and how we interpret those experiences. So how do we start to shift those belief systems? First, we have to have an awareness of it. And we have to say that this belief system actually isn't serving us.
Yeah, and then there's some, just to throw a little wrench in there's some self-compassion that has to come in. Because if you've been living a certain way in a belief system, and all of a sudden there's a little opening where you're like, oh, what if I'm wrong? What if I've built my whole story, my whole scenario, the life that I gotten to this point, and I can't actually go any further because my belief system says I can't? What happens when that little bit of light comes through?
Well, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
My experience is that there can be a lot of anger, a lot of victimhoodness, if that's a word, looking back and finding blame. Mm-hmm. What got me here? I can't believe it. My parents, my politics. They lied to me in the media. They did this, they that, everything outside of me. There's a lot of anger. And that was where people will stop. They'll shut that door. They'll just shut down that little piece of light that may be coming in to say, okay, maybe if I shift my mindset, or if I look at something differently, or if I change my perspective, I might actually see that I can keep going and growing and maybe even being happy again. Mm-hmm. But like you said earlier, a lot of anger and a lot of fear, sadness lives in that primal state. Mm-hmm. But as we grow as human beings, we're designed to grow. We entropy, we can't stand still. We must grow. If we don't grow, we're moving backwards. There's no standing still. There's no standing still.
Exactly. Now, let's just kind of go off of that a little bit longer. So we understand a couple things. Number one is that belief systems are true for us, but it's not the truth.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah, you're going to get some pushback on that one from people. They think they know the truth.
They know the truth, but it is the truth for them.
Yeah.
It is the truth for us. I have my belief systems. You have yours. I mean, at the end of the day, they're true for us. But if you're not willing to really question them, how does that belief system serve you today?
Yeah, what if it's not true anymore?
What if it's not true anymore? Or what if, to go to the next level, you have to shift your belief system? If you don't believe something is possible, then guess what? Opportunities don't show up. And if you don't believe it's possible, there's no freaking way you can do it. We've shared many times on the show, I can't do that.
Because?
Yeah, you have all the reasons. But if you take a simple word and go, I can't do that yet, that means that you're going to step back from it and actually question what your belief systems are. That's part of it. So, there's a fundamental that we, in the world of, self-uncovery, is that we have to look at it and question what it is that we believe in order to change our story. And what do we want our story to be? We have to actually ask ourselves, what do we want that story to be? And that's going to change all the time, because what you want your story to be in your 20s and 30s is different than what you're going to want it to be in your 60s. But you don't know what you want it to be in your 20s. So you don't really know what you want your story to be until almost you arrive at your 60s. And then you go, I'm here. What do I want my story to be? So it's an evolution. And the same with your 40s. As you go through life, the point of it is that as you go through life, you are the character in whatever story you want to create. So what is the story you want to create? And that means looking and having the awareness of, in this case, what we're talking about today is a belief system. And how do we start to shift them?
Right. And the best part of that is that it circles back to self-responsibility. And a lot of what's being taken away from people right now is their responsibility to their self, their success, their vision, their goals. And I just want to shine a light on that. The goal hasn't changed. For me, my life being my best self, taking care of my health, taking care of our home and our finances, that hasn't changed. It doesn't matter how divisive a vax or no vax or whatever's going on in the news or the social media areas of the world. But if you let that drive you, if you let what's outside of you drive that, then there is a place where you have to actually lock in your belief systems because there's no growth there. You're locked back into the fixed mindset or in the false mindset.
But this goes back to where we started this conversation around, what is the goal that you have? What are the outcomes you're working backwards from? Okay, so are you interested or are you committed? So even in the word of commitment, it's going to take a belief system that you can do it and that you're prepared to do what it takes. You have to believe that part of it. So these are all little nuances that drive us and help us continue to move forward. So if your belief systems dictate your thoughts, your thoughts dictate your emotions. Your emotions dictate your actions. It's actually quite a pragmatic thought process that we go. So what is the belief system interrupter that we need to do, which is first awareness. Why do I believe that? How is this actually serving me? What is the habit it's creating because of that belief system? And stopping long enough to question it.
Do you think that there's like an addictive personality type that is really locked in to the fixed mindset?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, that there's that part of it that so much work, listen, we talk about right here. If you're listening to this podcast because at some level you want to really look at yourself. You want to ask yourself, what can I look at? Is there some ideas here? Can Patrick and Steffany, share some of their thought processes and what they're learning along the way that would actually help me? That's why you're listening to this podcast. Somebody with a fixed mindset, I guarantee you is not listening to this podcast.
Yeah, good point.
Okay.
So we're preaching to the choir here?
Well, I think we're preaching to the choir, but you and I both think we are all open-minded and, profound, but at the end of the day, we have our own fixed mindsets as well. We know that about ourselves. And so we are always examining it. As I say, and as we say with our coaching clients, is that we're on the journey as well. We're just probably entering it at a different point of the conversation, and we're entering it for ourselves and where we are in the conversation of development and understanding.
But that's so important. I remember being coached always through my life. I've never not had a coach. And the most powerful experiences have always been with the coaches that go, I'd never thought of it that way. That's a really interesting point. Or have allowed me to say, you know what, I'm bumping into a belief system here. I need to talk through, I need to work it out, and I just need a safe place to talk about it, because if what I'm getting to makes me kind of have to evaluate or reevaluate some choices that I've made or some decisions that I've made or a lifestyle that I have, that could be really scary.
Yeah. So when we look at, and have that as self-awareness, when we look at, for example, if we can understand that our belief system drive our thoughts, drive our emotions, drive our actions, we have to look at that emotional part of it. What is the emotion? Is it that anxiety? Is it the anger? Is it the frustration?
Fear.
Is it the fear? When we see that primal state that all of us can get to really easily and really quickly. It does take an elevated thought process to recognize that you are in that particular state. So this was interesting. So the example that was shared with me around understanding primal state was, realizing that there was anxiety, and it was a circumstance where the anxiety was being created because the person realized that the environment they were in was really elevated in their eyes. There was a lot of really important people, and they went, holy shit, I don't belong here. What am I doing here? So in his case, he actually had a coach, and the coach phones him and says, well, hold on for a second. Let's just back up. You're in that primal state. Why are you in that primal state? Well, I know I'm in the primal state, number one, because I got anxiety. The story I'm telling myself is I don't belong here. And so the coach then circles back and says, okay, it's an interesting loop. You're spiritual, you believe in God. And if you believe that God orchestrates the world in your favor, why would God ever put you someplace you don't belong?
Ooh, good story.
Right?
It's true.
So what did the guy get to? He goes, I believe that. That's my belief system. And so why would God ever put me anywhere I don't belong? I belong anywhere and everywhere. And it was it was a realization. Now, what happened in that particular case with that gentleman that was in the wrong environment, or in a not in the wrong environment, sorry, in the environment that he felt that he didn't belong, was that he had a realization that his belief system had now shifted. And it had shifted to number one, out of his faith in God / the universe doesn't make mistakes. You know, it puts you where you belong. So that was a step in the realization, and that's how things can unfold. Now,
that's a sign of a good coach too, because he knew that person well enough. The coach knew that person well enough to know that they had a strong spiritual belief in God, and then the coach was able to link that. That's brilliant.
Connected him, right? Which is brilliant. Now, the other side of that is, of course, is what if you don't have a strong spiritual, you know, and that the world necessarily always, the universe is not always unfolding in your favor. You know, we believe, you and I both believe, you know, intensely, that everything that happens is in fact unfolding as it should for us. And, you know, we don't happen to call it God, but we do believe that the higher power is in fact we're part of consciousness. Therefore, we are part of energy. Therefore, we are part of what's happening in the universe, and we're tapping into all the things that we tap into, and it unfolds the way it needs to. And we can.
Well, we either, you know, you've said this a lot. You either believe that or you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're being a victim to something that's happening, and you go, well, wait a sec, we need to shift that, because if this is happening to you, you're not in your empowered state. You're in your primal state, but it's happening for you. So what if, I mean, we're here on this time on earth for this particular reason. I don't know why, but I know it's not a mistake.
Yes. So I want to go back to primal state and belief systems. Okay. Not go back to it. I want to expand on what we talked about, because as much as you might believe universal, God, whatever, and everything's unfolding as it should, you know, the universe is for you, not against you, and all of those kinds of conversations. What happens if you don't believe that?
Well, I'm also noticing in some of my friends that have a strong belief in God and that Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior, they're questioning. They're like, God, why are you letting this happen? Mm-hmm. So now they've got a different conversation going on with their God, which is...
Well, they're questioning their belief.
They're questioning your belief systems.
Right. So that leaves, you know, and that's fine. I get all that, and that's fine. They're questioning their belief systems. But what if we go back to the story of being primal state versus empowering state, and you don't have anything to connect the dots, and you're in primal state? Now what? Now what do you do? Because you're an intellect. Now,
you watch the news. Well, you watch mainstream media and get your information.
Okay, stop it. Because that's that.
I digress.
You digress. And that's not, the point of it is this, is that there's lots of people that don't have a higher power belief. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, the point is that you have to look at it and say, okay, well, how do I get out of this primal state of being reactive, being an emotional mess, or, you know, emotionally charged about something? You know, one extreme, you know, to hate, to overjoy, to being ecstatic, or being, you know, shut down with anger and or fear and or anxiety that comes with it. So, you know, this is always the first step, is awareness, but it's not enough. That's the point of really this podcast, folks, is that awareness isn't enough. It is very important that you have the awareness so that you can actually change the story that you want to change. You can actually make changes, but you have to say, how do I change that? What changes do I make?
Do I need to make?
Right. What changes do I need to make? Well, the first change you need to make is recognize your belief system and belief systems. And you don't have to look at the whole world. Like, don't overwhelm it. Look at the 7 areas of your life, you know, whether it be emotional, physical, spiritual, financial, vocational, familial. And I think that's 6. I don't remember, but I got the 7th, social. The point is this, is break it down into chunks. And what are my belief systems around relationship? I mean, how many times have you and I supported people around relationship because they believe they would never find the right person, right? Like, are you kidding me right now? So, but if you have that belief system, you will never find the right person. We can start there. What's your belief system around money? What's your belief system around business? So where are you looking at and telling yourself a story that puts you into a primal state in some area of your life? It's rare, probably. I don't know. I'm not a professional in that regard. All I know is that for you to be in a primal state for your whole life, your entire life, not your whole life, but in its entirety, it's one of those components of those 7 areas of your life.
Yeah, good point. And I think when you have the support, for example, and you've got like-minded people, and for you and I, to be compassionate coaches with a non-judgmental, whether what's going on for you is not right or wrong, it is what's going on for you. So let's unpack that. Let's discover it. Let's bump into the belief systems that you're holding right now that's in your way. That's my job as a coach, is to not confirm that you're right or wrong. It's to actually help you maybe hold up a mirror.
Well, as coaches, we know this, right? We don't have answers. We only have great questions. And our job as coaches is to ask great questions. And for you, because we all have the answers, we just need somebody to ask us great questions that have no agenda around them other than to guide us to the answer that we seek. And that's an important part about being coachable as well. So, tools, number one, we talk about it often. Slow down, examine it. So rather than be in the charge of the emotion, whatever that emotion is, stop and examine the emotion and say, what is it? Where does it live? Where did it come from? Just don't buy into your belief system. And now that can come, and this is where you may, meditation, a great tool, breath work, great tool, journaling, get it out in front of you. I can't stress enough that when you write something, get it out of your head onto a piece of paper or a tablet or something in front of you. It's no longer in your head. It is the most impactful thing you can do, I believe.
I agree. And there's structures of journaling that are really, really helpful. And the line I love is, don't believe everything you think.
That or feel.
But
that's a great
right?
one. I love that.
Don't believe everything you feel.
Or think. Okay.
We're hilarious.
No, we're hilarious. Okay. So, folks, hopefully this has opened your mind a little bit to understanding that it is awareness is very important. It is a step always in a journey of shifting and
it's
changing.
Not judgment.
It's
Awareness
not
is
judgment.
Not judgment.
Awareness is of yourself. Self-awareness and is only one component of it. Being self-aware is like a very, very high level initial step. Then you say, okay, am I okay with that? Or do I want to make a change to that? Then you have to self-examine.
Right. And that's where I would step in and ask the question very humbly to myself or to you or to my clients is what if you're wrong? What if I'm wrong about this opinion? Or what if my belief system has taken me to an opinion that I'm now committed to defending with my life, with my staff, stuck in the ground, and that's, my belief system. And my question then is, how's that working for you? Famous Dr. Phil, and why are you getting coached if you are more committed to that belief system than you are to your growth and development?
Fantastic. We're going to leave it on that note. And folks, hopefully this has opened up some doors of question for you. That's what it's intended to do with, really some workable tools that we know are effective in terms of self-examination. And we went through some of those things, but question our belief systems and awareness of those belief systems is not enough. Understanding where those belief systems come from and how they're driving our life is really what is important. So if your life isn't a reflection of what you want it to be, whether that be in any of those 7 areas of your life, quick list of them is mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, vocational, financial, and familial. And if you go through those 7 areas of life, you'll soon discover that there's probably 6 of those 7 areas of your life are pretty awesome. And so then look at your belief system around money or around family or around relationship, and then start to self-examine there. Question your belief systems, get it out in front of you where you can see it, see where they formed, and always look at the signal of being in primal state versus empowering state. Primal state is always reactive. It's always emotional on the negative side of things. So just some food for thought. Hopefully this has been an awesome podcast. Steffany, thanks as always for having this conversation and being on this journey of mindset matters. Thanks very much.
Thanks. That was fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. If you found value in the podcast, please take the time to rate and review and share with others. Share with your friends. As it is my goal to always improve and to provide the highest value for you, the listener, If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions you'd like answered, please email me at ceo@reincanada.com. That's ceo@reincanada.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And until next time, Patrick out.